Hello and welcome to a live talk on fear. Fear is one of my favorite topics because it affects us and our lives in so many different directions. So if you'd read or if you've watched some of my previous videos to explain that what I do is I see everything in terms of energy. Fear is one of those things I see. And fear is a great, big, massive energy, and it's really misunderstood energy. I could talk for hours about how it affects us on a global scale and as a collective, but we don't have enough time for that. Today, we're going to stay focused on how it affects us as individuals and our life's path. I'd rather talk about how it invades our lives and how it melds in the background and runs like an open app on a smartphone. It's a misunderstood energy because when we think of fear, we think of an emotion. We think of, the amygdala getting triggered and fight, flight, or freeze being set off, and we either run or stay and fight or become completely paralyzed. And yes, that's true. But that is such a tiny, tiny amount of what fear really is and what it was meant to do in our lives. It was meant to be a teacher. It was meant to help us to grow, to move forward. As I've said in the past, that you can't know one without the other. You can't know what it is to be fearless unless you have been fearful. Sorry, I don't know what's happening here. Something's going on in my decline. Okay. Oopsie. Sorry about that. I don't know what exactly happened. But in order to know what it is to be fearless and what it is to be strong, you first have to know what it is to be filled with fear and to be paralyzed. In the ancient people really had one up on us in that they took all of these massive energies like fear and chaos, and they worshiped them as gods. They had their own names, their own stories. Phobos was the Greek god of fear, and they would pay homage to them. They would talk to them. And that is kind of what it is to learn to work with the actual energy as opposed to the emotion. Now, when we're going to look at fear strictly from the energetic side today. When it comes to working with energy, we tend to think there are two sides, light and shadow. In actuality, there are three. All energy starts in a neutral state, okay? It's all neutral. How we manage that energy pulls it into the light or the shadow. And when we allow fear, and yes, fear has an extremely strong, powerful light side to it, but when we allow it to pull us into the shadow, is when it becomes detrimental, not only to us, our lives' paths, but to our physical bodies, because our bodies are the dumping ground for all of our fears and our anxieties and things we don't deal with, things we hide from. We are responsible, each individual is responsible for how they manage the energy, how they allow it to work in their lives, okay? The light side of fear, we all know the shadow side of fear, which is running rampant these days itself, fear-mongering. We don't know who to believe in the political realm because everybody's so busy spreading fear, trying to get you over to their side that it's easy to get confused. Deep-seated, unrealized fears that hide in the background in our shadows that prevent us from doing the things that we want to do for our lives because of fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, fear of ... It goes on and on and on. Fear can literally stifle and stop your creativity. It can prevent you from thinking out of the box. It's a paralyzing energy if you allow it to be. Fear was meant to be a teacher, but we give it so much more than that. We give it control. We allow it to dictate to us what we're going to do. And many times, if it's a deep-seated, unrealized fear, you don't know it's there. And those are the ones that are the most dangerous. And when I work with clients and students, those are the ones we're after. I don't care about your surface fears. I don't care if you have a fear of spiders. I don't care about any of that. What I care about are the ones that are preventing you from living your life to the fullest, to what you wanted your life to be. Now the light side of fear. Light side of fear can be scary on its own because fear brings the gift of truth. Fear never lies to you, ever. In fact, the energy we know is truth, right? It is always with fear because we fear truth. And with fear comes the gift of truth. Once you know the truth of what's going on and you've looked at it, then you can make a path to move through it, right? But it's only until you've looked at it face to face, whatever it is, until you faced it and looked at it and acknowledged it and say, yes, I see you. I see the truth and everything that is with it. You lay it all out on the table, then you can start to move forward. Fear is a great big warning sign, right? It's the protector. It's also a motivator. Nothing motivates us faster than fear of being homeless, fear of not being able to do this or being able to do that. Fear is a fantastic motivator, and that's in its light. You know, the fear of building something up and then having it all fall down just because of something you fear. It's amazing how much fear can motivate us to pull us forward. For health reasons, myself and others I know that face fear of being bedridden for health issues. And that fear of being bedridden launches me out of bed every single day. And so I'm grateful for that fear to be there. Fear is also, for many people, a call to arms, right? First responders. All of those people that worked in the hospitals, the grocery stores, the delivery drivers, all of them, they went to work in the face of fear so that they could be of service, right? That's a call to arms. And that's the light side of fear. It pulls fear into the neutral when you're willing to set aside your fears of and get out there and do what needs to be done. 9/11, first responders were out there, not thinking about themselves so much as they were, what could they do? Fear was right next to them all the time, but fear did not own them, right? Phobos was near them, but he did not own them. Now, I want to really work on today the smaller fears that we have that run through us. I don't want to just sit here and spend all the time talking about fear, because we can go on and on and on about fear because it's such a rich, crazy subject. But what we want to do is we want to leave you with something to where you can take a look at your own fears, see where they are. If you want to start looking at your own fears, it's important that you start looking through small ones first. Don't go after the big giant ones yet, okay? You need to get used to, you need to put your waters in your toes in the water the shallow end of the water when it comes to fear. You dive into the deep side, you're in trouble. When fear arrives, and fear is part of your life's path. There's no such thing as I have no fears. That's a shadow statement. Everybody has fears. It's how you manage the fear. Okay? Fear rides along with you all day, every day, just like the shadow, just like the light, and just like the neutral. We have so many energies surrounding us all day, every day. But fear asks one question when it arrives. I'm here. What are you going to do about it? That's the only question it asks. Because the rest is up to you. If you look at Phobos and say, okay, I see you, but I got to take a step back. You're a little much for me to handle right now. Take your step back. And then what you want to do, once you've picked the fear you want to work on, you got to have a clearer understanding. And so, as I always say, first you start with clarity. If you don't have clarity, then you don't know what you're getting into. You need to start watching your fear. I don't care if you think you know your fear. I guarantee you, if you watch how it moves in and out of your daily life or reflect on some of your experiences where fear was present, you'll see that it was there, and you'll see what it was doing and how it was moving. First, you have to see it. First, you have to acknowledge it, right? First, you have to own it, because once you own it, then you can become in control of it. Okay? If you're not controlling it, it's controlling you. It doesn't just lay there. That's not how it works. It's one of two ways. You're controlling it, or it's controlling you. So first you pull it forward, say, I see you. I see you, Phobos. I see what you got. I see the fear. Here it is. And then you acknowledge it, you admit it, and then you study it. Everything you can find about that fear. Where did it come from? Is it a surface fear? Is it a founded fear or an unfounded fear? Those are two different types of fear. A founded fear is one that we actually experience. Okay, we were actually in. An unfounded fear is one that we saw happen or heard about, and it scares us or creates a fear inside of us. And then it lives there for so long that it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. After 9/11, so many people were afraid to fly. Rightfully so. But some people took that fear to the nth degree and became so afraid to fly that even here we are 10 years later, they're afraid to fly. Now, if you don't want to go anywhere, that's fine. But if it's somewhere you want to travel and you want to do things and you're allowing this fear to stop you, that's unfounded fear. Okay? A founded fear is one that you experience. Unfounded is one you've seen, experienced. There are lineage fears, fears that are brought through the line. Famine, depression times, that fear of not having enough or lacking is still prevalent in many people whose families were involved in times like that. That fear, it still winds its way through. So there's the lineage fears. There's learned fears, fears your family taught you. You should be afraid of this. You should be afraid of that. That's fine if it fits you. If it doesn't suit you, it takes from you. Does that make sense? It's got to suit you. There's irrelevant and nonsensical fears, right? Those fears, sure, you can work on those if you want. I have a crazy fear of clowns, which I blame on my brother. Hi, Freeman. Because of some haunted houses he took me to when I was little, and we were always into Halloween, and then clowns now just freak me out. But it's a nonsensical fear. It means nothing. It doesn't stop my life. It doesn't stop me from going to the haunts with my brother. It doesn't stop me from doing anything. It's irrational, but it's also irrelevant, right? And then there's the healthy and the unhealthy fears. A healthy fear is when you're in a relationship and you need to get out of that relationship, right? You know you need to get out, but you're afraid. So that healthy fear is what's going to drive you out of that relationship. The unhealthy fear is when you stay there and you know it's unhealthy and you know it's harming you, but you're too afraid to do anything about it. That's the unhealthy fear. So while you're studying your fear, you'll want to break it down where it originated. Does it fit into one of the types of fears? And there's many types of fears. That's just a kind of a short list. Where does it fit in? How does it affect you? When does it pop up? Learn as much about it as you can, because what happens then, once you know as much as you can, then the next step is to take action, okay? As we know, nothing changes without action. It doesn't matter whether it's manifestation, it doesn't matter whether you're starting a new career or hiding from something, it doesn't matter. Action is an energy. It's a massive energy, and it's the energy it's a creative energy that makes things actually happen. Because if you don't take the action, nothing happens, right? So once you've found your fear, you've dissected it totally and completely. You see where it is, you see where it's coming from, you know it, but now you have to take the action to actually change it. And one of the things when you're working on your fears, try to work on them when they're not active, okay? If you have a fear of being around large groups of people, don't go stand in front of a large group of people just so you can. Once the fear activates, your brain will activate. All of the physical symptoms will come clombing down on you like a freight train, and they'll paralyze you. And then you'll feel like a failure, okay? The brain's response to fear is to release all of these awful feelings: sweatiness, shaking, shortness of breath, nervousness, not feeling like you're going to be able to do it. And then when you start shaking, you become shortness of breath. Then you can't think because you don't have any oxygen going to your brain. And then you go into the failure mode. And then when you go to try it again, then you've reached fear of failure, and you have to work through that too. So when you're studying your fears, try to study them at a distance through reflection, right? How you behaved, how you act, what happened to you. But again, when you go into reflection, absolutely no judgment. Because the minute you start judging yourself, you're sunk. You're not going to get anywhere if the self-judgment, critical mind gets in there and starts hammering away at you, telling you won't be able to do it. Then you're lost, right? So pull out, take a breath, take some time, and then go back in. Now, when you are ready to start to work on your fear, you first create a plan of action, how you want to do it, and when you're going to do it. You want it to be controlled. You want to be in control of this action, because when you're in control and you take step by step of controlled actions, you're attacking the fear from an energetic perspective and not from a mental perspective, right? You're attacking it from a perspective of control. You're in control, not it in control, right? And remember, you have to carry with you the energy of intent. The universal law of intent drives all energy. Without the universal law of intent, then you're just standing there fighting with a wall. So your intent is to change how this fear operates in you, right? So you create your plan of action step by step. including how your mind, how to deal with the physical responses, right? The physical responses are the worst. They are the ones that will prevent you and send you running the opposite direction or paralyze you. And if that happens, if you start to step into your plan of action and you can't do it, you don't get to beat yourself up. What you get to do is you get to pull out so that you can do it another day and then try again and then try again. There's no such thing as failure as long as you keep trying little bits, different angles, change your plan up. How can I do this? How can I do that? One of the things that we tend to do in this day and age when we want to attack something like a giant fear is we go at it with all teeth and, try to wrestle it to the ground. And then what? You tie it up and let it leak out in other areas? That doesn't work. I've tried it with the fear of clowns. So it's just better to find that fear and go straight into your plan of action, little bits at a time. Now, dealing with the mind. Okay, control your breath. Don't let fear control the breath or the brain control the breath. You control the breath. Pick one of your favorite songs that might be an empowering song. Sing it either in your head or out loud as you're breathing. Focus on the words, because as long as your critical ego mind has something to chew on, it will be not having its attention so much on the fact that you're terrified, right? It'll be slower. And you slow everything down like you're in slow motion. You're in control, you're walking through slow motion, you're singing your song, you're controlling your breath. And then you move one foot in front of the other past whatever it is that you're trying to get through. And then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again until one day you realize that this fear is part of your history, right? Because that's where you want it, is part of your history. You can't erase it because that's not fair. It's part of your history, and once you've moved past it, you've moved into growth. And you feel strong and proud of yourself and ready to go at the next fear. There's so many different types of fear that they change and new ones come all the time. FOMO, fear of missing out, was one that was never here. Now, I could sit here and judge and all of that, but I'm not going to, because what scares somebody and what paralyzes them is not funny, and it's not worth being judged over. Because the minute judging starts, then healing stops. It just stops. And then fear wins. So, if you have a fear of missing out, this is a great plan for you to try to start. Anxieties right now, especially in America, are just, anxiety is like one of the number one, anxiety is fear. It's like one of the number one things that we all suffer right now. It's because we are all desperately trying to keep our heads above water financially and responsibly, and it just causes so much anxiety. And if you're going to go after something like your anxieties, you need to separate them out. Don't treat any two anxieties the same, because they're not. They have different triggers. They have different responses that will work and responses that will not work. So when it comes to anxieties, separate them out. Take them as individuals. You're not in a hurry to work on your fears. There's no race to move through a fear. It takes something that's one at a time, slowly, moving forward. And then there's the part where you say, okay, I can honor myself. I can honor myself that I don't like crowds. I don't do well in crowds, but I'm still going to go to the concert. I'll just work on how I get out. Do you see what I mean? So you're honoring the fear of the crowd, but you're still going. You're still doing your thing. You're just finding a different exit strategy. Because a lot of people get anxiety. That's why I'm using that one. Does anybody have any questions regarding fears, or fears they'd like to throw at me that they would like to maybe have a little bit of help with? You can always leave me a comment below. You can reach out to me on my website, billyburchett.com. Make sure you add the 2 E's, or I don't know where you'll end up. Reach out to me, and I can help you, steer you in the right direction for your fears. Because fear is a necessary part of life, and it's not going away. So when it stands up, when Phobos comes to you and says, I'm here, what are you going to do about it? Sit down with Phobos, have a conversation. You're made up of energy. Phobos is made up of energy. We know you talk to yourself. We all talk to ourselves. So talk to your fears. Ask them. But you'll know the difference in the answer, because the fear will be honest. Your ego mind has no need for honesty. It will lie, cheat, and steal to get what it wants. So follow the honesty, and the fear doesn't have any stake in it, right? The ego does. The ego always has an agenda. It's not my most favorite aspect of us, but it's something that we all have. If you're in the human body, you have an ego mind and you have fear. So it's about learning to manage your fear before it manages you. And at some point, I will be offering a very big, probably a couple-day class on fear, because it's so big and so much to discuss. But next week, we will have another topic, and I'll do a 30-minute talk on that. So I want to thank you for joining me. And if you have any comments, comment below, like and subscribe. Can you explain how we talk to our imposter syndrome fears when they, imposter syndrome? Do you mean fears that aren't, I'm sorry, what do you mean by imposter syndrome? It can mean many things. Is it a fear that you didn't experience? Is that what you mean? Or you saw? Okay. She's not responding. So I'm not sure what you meant by imposter syndrome, so I'm not going to comment on that. So thank you for joining me today. When we feel like we are not an expert enough. Okay, so she's responded, when we feel like we are not an expert enough or don't belong amongst people. That's a huge fear. That's actually two fears, expert enough or belonging. Those are two separate fears. And actually, those two fears can keep you humble, because you know some people who feel like they are the expert, they are the best, they're the number one. And I not only belong amongst people, I like to be in charge of all of the people. So they're two separate fears, first of all. Then what you want to do is you want to take a look and why do you feel you're not an expert? And when you do this, do not go by society's rules, because many times we have an innate ability to talk to people or to do something that some people take forever to become an expert in, right? They go through all this schooling and they have all these degrees and they are an expert, and then they come across someone who's innately. People go to school for years to learn how to tell if someone's lying. And then you have people who are just born innately knowing how that can tell when someone's lying. So stop listening to what society says, right? And have a chat with that inner voice of yours, both of those inner voices with you, and ask the question, why? Why do you feel this way? Where are you from? Are you lineage? because it's obviously coming from the critical mind telling you you can't do something, right? Which is a fear sitting in the background. Always a fear sitting in the background, trying to wiggle its way around, okay? Because somebody somewhere years ago told you you shouldn't do this, or you're not good enough for that. Pull that forward, spread it out, take a look at it, and I think you'll find that there's nothing at the end of it except for somebody else's voice. Because if your inner world is telling you to do it, right? Because that's what we listen to, the inner world, not the cranky ego mind, okay? Thank you all for joining me, and I hope to see you next week, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you. Bye-bye.